The first scream came from the hospital morgue. Another beautiful young black woman had been brought in with the same 2 wounds on her neck. But this time, Naomi Carter was already there, standing beside Damian Cross as he collapsed. When officers rushed in, they saw only one thing: a black woman over the body of the town's golden man. They thought they had their killer. What they didn't know was that Naomi had just forced evil into the open and made herself look guilty to stop the next death. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you believe some heroes are willing to look guilty to save the innocent, this story is for you. Ashwood Pines, Vermont wore autumn like a memory that refused to fade. For a few quiet seconds, the town looked almost too perfect. Amber porch lights glowing against old brick storefronts, maple leaves drifting across narrow stone streets, and the distant silver shimmer of Silver Lake beneath a gray evening sky. A thin mist rolled down from the northern hills, softening the church steeple and the row of Victorian homes that lined Main Street. It was the kind of American town where people still waved from their porches and remembered the names of your parents. But tonight, the air carried something colder than October wind: fear. By sunrise, the third body had been found. She was Tiana Bell, a 24-year-old black woman known across town for her bright laugh, warm caramel-brown skin, and elegant confidence. She worked evenings at the town library and spent weekends helping organize Ashwood Pines' beloved Fall Lantern Festival. Tiana had a slender, graceful build, shoulder-length natural curls, and kind hazel eyes that made people feel instantly seen. Her warmth came from years of helping raise her younger siblings after her mother's illness, a burden that had made her mature far beyond her age. Now she lay near the fog-covered edge of Silver Lake, still dressed in the emerald coat she had worn the night before. 2 tiny puncture wounds marked her neck. The crowd gathering behind the police tape grew quieter with every passing minute. Sheriff Daniel Mercer, a broad-shouldered white man in his late 50s with a weathered face and silver stubble, stood near the body with his jaw locked tight. Daniel had spent 30 years policing a town where the worst crimes were usually drunken bar fights or stolen hunting gear. The sight before him had changed the lines on his face in only 3 months. His steady hands were respected, but lately they had begun to tremble when another young woman was found. "This makes 3, one deputy whispered. 3 beautiful young black women. 3 bodies near the lake. 3 identical wounds. And no answers." By noon, the state had sent someone in. Detective Monica Brooks stepped out of a dark sedan just as the church bells struck 12. She was a 34-year-old black detective from Boston Homicide, tall and athletic with deep brown skin, sharp cheekbones, and observant dark eyes that missed very little. Her black wool coat moved sharply in the wind, and her natural curls were tied into a practical low bun. Monica carried herself with the kind of stillness that made people lower their voices around her. She had not always been this guarded. 10 years earlier, her younger sister had vanished outside a Boston nightclub, and the case had never been solved. That loss had stripped away Monica's softness and replaced it with discipline, instinct, and an almost relentless refusal to let patterns go unnoticed. Every unsolved case felt personal now. She crouched beside Tiana's body, her gloved fingers hovering near the puncture wounds. "Same spacing," she murmured. Daniel exhaled slowly, exactly like the other 2. Monica looked toward the water, where the lake moved in unnatural stillness beneath the mist. No drag marks, no defensive wounds, no signs of struggle. Her voice was low, controlled. Whoever did this knew how to make them feel safe. That sentence silenced the officers around her, because it felt true. By late afternoon, Monica sat inside the small Ashwood Pines Police Department, a brick building overlooking Main Street. Files covered the conference table. The first victim, Jasmine Holloway, 26, black, elementary school teacher, beloved by nearly every family in town. The second, Renee Carter, 29, black, pediatric nurse at Silver Lake Medical Center, known for volunteering free weekends at the community clinic. Now, Tiana. 3 women from different professions, different neighborhoods, different social circles, But Monica kept circling one detail in red ink. All three had attended private invitation-only parties hosted by the wealthiest residents of Ashwood Pines. Not public galas, not town events, exclusive late-night gatherings in restored mansions overlooking the hills. She leaned back, slowly, dark eyes narrowing. "This isn't random," she said. Daniel folded his arms. "You think the parties matter?" "I know they matter." Monica spread photos across the table, each victim smiling under chandeliers, crystal glasses in hand, surrounded by members of Ashwood Pines' elite. The same faces appeared in the background again and again. Old money families, local investors, a few politicians, and one unknown male silhouette near two of the women. Monica tapped the image. "This man. Find him." Across town, inside Vanessa Reed's salon, warm, yellow lights glowed against rose-gold mirrors and polished marble floors. Vanessa Reed was impossible to ignore. A 32-year-old black woman with rich mahogany skin, long, silk-pressed hair, and striking amber eyes, Vanessa moved through the salon like she owned not just the room, but the mood inside it. She was medium height, elegant, with a tailored cream blouse and gold bracelets that chimed softly when she worked. To most of Ashwood Pines, she was the woman who made everyone look flawless before every gala, fundraiser, and private party. But beneath her flawless composure lived grief. Her younger cousin, Maya Reed, only 22, had been the first woman found near Silver Lake 3 months earlier. Since then, Vanessa smiled less, trusted less, and recorded everything. Tonight, after her final client left, Vanessa locked the front door and walked to the back office. Her manicured fingers hovered over a row of archived security drives. Then she quietly deleted footage from one specific night. The screen went black. A shadow crossed the frosted front window. She froze, then turned. No one. Still, her heartbeat stayed fast, because the deleted footage showed one of the dead girls leaving the salon and stepping into a black pickup truck. At the Ashwood Pines Gazette, journalist Claire Donovan sat beneath the pale glow of a desk lamp, surrounded by yellowed newspapers and half-empty coffee cups. Claire was a 29-year-old white reporter with pale freckled skin, sharp blue-gray eyes, and auburn hair twisted into a messy knot that kept slipping loose as she worked. She was slim, restless, and had the nervous energy of someone who lived more in questions than in answers. Her father, once the town's editor, had died exposing a corruption scandal when Claire was 16. Since then, truth had become less of a profession and more of an inheritance. She pulled an old 10-year-old article from the archives. 4 women missing over 2 years. No suspects. Her breath caught. All women. All young. 3 were black. Last seen after a high society event. Her fingers tightened around the paper. "This didn't start now," she whispered. The newsroom suddenly felt colder. As twilight settled over Ashwood Pines, 12-year-old Eli Turner pedaled his bicycle down the lakeside road, newspaper satchel bouncing against his side. Eli was small for his age, skinny with warm brown skin, large, curious eyes, and a mop of short curls that never stayed flat under his knit cap. He was bright, observant, and far older in spirit than most boys his age, shaped by helping his widowed mother deliver newspapers before school every morning. He slowed near the trees. That was when he saw it again. A black pickup truck, parked half-hidden near the path leading to Silver Lake. Its headlights were off. Its engine ticked softly in the dark. Eli frowned. He had seen the same truck 2 nights ago, the night Tiana disappeared. A branch snapped nearby. The truck engine roared to life. Eli jumped off his bike, stumbling backward as the vehicle sped past, mud spraying across the road. For one brief second, the taillight illuminated part of the plate. He memorized the last 3 numbers. 417. That same night, Monica stood alone outside the police station, staring across Main Street as rain began to fall. Golden streetlights shimmered against wet stone roads. Beautiful. Quiet. Haunted. 3 women dead. A town hiding something. A salon owner deleting evidence. a journalist reopening old ghosts, a frightened newspaper boy with a partial plate. Monica looked toward the hilltop mansions where the private parties were held. Somewhere inside Ashwood Pines, someone powerful still believed they were untouchable. She slipped the victim photos back into her folder and whispered into the cold night, "Tomorrow we start with the guest list." The rain deepened, and above Silver Lake the mist thickened like something alive. The next morning, Ashwood Pines woke beneath a curtain of cold drizzle and pale silver light. Rain clung to the old stone streets, turning the town's golden lanterns into blurred halos across the wet pavement. Monica Brooks stood alone inside the police station's evidence room. The guest list from the private hilltop parties spread across the metal desk before her. Names of donors, business owners, politicians, and old money families filled the page, but one name kept resurfacing beside each victim's timeline with unsettling precision: Damien Cross. The name was written in elegant black ink on every list. The same man had attended all 3 exclusive gatherings. The same man had been photographed in the background near Jasmine and Renee. The same man had once sponsored the renovation of the Silver Lake Community Pier where Tiana's body had been found. Monica circled the name once, then again. "Too visible," she whispered, "or too confident." Sheriff Daniel Mercer stood in the doorway, coffee steaming in his hand. "You know him?" "Not yet," Monica replied, closing the folder. "But men like this always make sure they're known." By noon, Monica found herself climbing the polished marble steps of Cross and Vale Architecture, the most prestigious design firm in Ashwood Pines. The office occupied a restored 19th-century bank building overlooking Main Street, all glass walls and warm walnut interiors that whispered old money and new ambition. And at the center of it all stood Damien Cross. He was a 38-year-old black architect with a commanding but effortless presence. Tall and broad-shouldered with deep bronze skin, a sharply tailored charcoal suit, and a calm, measured smile that never seemed forced. His face was striking. Defined jawline, intelligent dark eyes, and neatly trimmed hair touched faintly with silver near the temples, giving him an air of maturity and control. Everything about Damien was polished, from the gold watch at his wrist to the softness of his voice. He had the kind of charisma that made people lean in before realizing they had done it. But it was his composure that stood out most. Nothing in him moved carelessly. "Detective Brooks," he said, extending a hand the moment she entered his office, as if he had been expecting her. "I heard Boston sent their best." Monica ignored the hand for a second too long before shaking it. His grip was warm. Steady, not a flicker of nervousness. "You knew all 3 victims," Monica said, taking the chair opposite his desk. Damien leaned back slightly, rainlight reflecting across the glass behind him. "Ashwood Pines is a small town. Most of us know everyone." "That's not what I asked." A faint smile curved his lips, amused rather than offended. "I sponsored the Fall Lantern Gala," he said smoothly. "Jasmine volunteered there. Renee helped organize the medical fundraiser. Tiana was on the Library Preservation Committee. Good women. Tragic losses." His voice carried exactly the right amount of sadness. Too perfect. Monica watched him closely. Years in homicide had taught her that grief and performance often wore the same suit. You were also seen speaking privately with Jasmine Holloway at the Bellwether estate party. Damien's expression barely changed. She asked about a teaching grant. And Renee. She wanted a donation for pediatric equipment. Tiana? Now his pause was almost imperceptible. The library roof repairs. Every answer clean, every explanation public-minded, every connection charitable. He had built himself into the image of a perfect gentleman long before Monica walked through that door. As she left the office, the receptionist greeted Damien with visible admiration. 2 construction workers stopped him in the lobby to thank him for funding a local playground. Outside, an elderly white woman touched his arm and called him the kindest man in Ashwood Pines. Monica hated how natural it all looked. Back at the station, she pinned Damien's photo at the center of the board. Perfect men, she knew, were often the hardest to expose. That evening, across town, Vanessa Reed sat alone in her darkened salon, replaying old appointment logs on her laptop. The only light came from the screen reflecting in her amber eyes. She had spent the entire afternoon cross-checking names. Jasmine Holloway, appointment 3 days before disappearance. Renee Carter, same-day evening styling before gala. Tiana Bell, hair consultation hours before she vanished. Vanessa's fingers froze over the keyboard. A fourth name appeared. Lena Price, a 27-year-old black event coordinator who had canceled her salon appointment the same night Maya Reed died 3 months ago. Vanessa leaned back, her heartbeat quickening. Lena had moved away shortly after Maya's death, or so everyone believed. Now, Vanessa wasn't sure. A memory flashed in her mind. Lena leaving the salon with freshly curled hair, smiling nervously as she mentioned she had been invited to one of Damien's private design dinners. Vanessa's throat tightened. This was bigger than coincidence. She opened a hidden drive where she had been saving client histories in secret since Maya's murder. Each missing woman had visited her salon before disappearing, always preparing for an exclusive night event. Someone was choosing them carefully and using beauty as part of the ritual. Across town at the Ashwood Pines Gazette, Claire Donovan's desk was buried beneath old clippings when the receptionist dropped a plain white envelope beside her coffee. No return address. Claire frowned. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed in block letters. If you want the truth, look for the old cabin in Red Maple Woods. He still uses it. No signature, no date. Claire's pulse spiked. Red Maple Woods stretched along the northern forest beyond Silver Lake, a place locals rarely entered after dark. The old logging trails there had long been abandoned, and stories of collapsed cabins and vanished hunters had lingered in town folklore for years. Claire folded the letter carefully, mind racing. This wasn't random fear-mongering. Someone knew something current, something real. She glanced at the board behind her desk where the 10-year-old disappearances were mapped in red string. One of the last missing women had been seen hiking near those same woods. A chill ran through her. The past wasn't repeating. It had never ended. That night, Monica sat alone in her motel room on the edge of town, rain tapping softly against the window. Damien's smiling photo stared back at her from the open case folder. Her phone buzzed. A message from Boston. An old file attachment. Her sister, Elise Brooks, age 22, had disappearance. Elise had been bright, warm, and effortlessly trusting, with soft brown skin, expressive dark eyes, and a laugh that filled every room she entered. She had been a graduate student in urban design, passionate about restoring forgotten neighborhoods. Monica had always blamed herself for letting Elise attend a private rooftop fundraiser the night she vanished. The parallels hit too hard now. Exclusive events, influential guests, young women disappearing after feeling chosen. Monica stared at Elise's old photo until her vision blurred. For the first time since arriving in Ashwood Pines, the case no longer felt adjacent to her grief. It felt like grief had been waiting for her here. She rose from the bed and returned to the evidence wall she had taped across the motel room desk. Damien's name. The private parties. The missing women from 10 years ago. The black pickup. Vanessa's salon connection. Claire's anonymous cabin lead. The lines between all of them were tightening, and Damien Cross sat at the center of every social map in town like a man who had designed the entire stage himself. Near midnight, Monica drove past the Cross and Vale office one last time before returning to the motel. A black pickup truck sat parked across the street beneath the rain. Headlights off, plate ending in 417. Her breath caught. Eli Turner's numbers. The truck pulled away before she could react, disappearing into the wet darkness leading north, toward the road that eventually wound into Red Maple Woods. Monica gripped the steering wheel tighter, but did not follow. Not yet, because this chapter of the puzzle was no longer about instinct alone. It was about proving that the perfect gentleman of Ashwood Pines was not simply admired. He was protected. And somewhere in those northern woods an old cabin was waiting. By the third morning, Ashwood Pines had learned how to whisper. Rain had finally passed, leaving the town washed in brittle autumn sunlight that glinted across wet cobblestones and the amber windows of old storefronts. The mist over Silver Lake still lingered, thinner now, like a secret that refused to disappear. On Main Street, people no longer spoke the victims' names out loud. They lowered their voices when Monica Brooks walked by, and they turned their heads whenever Damian Cross's black pickup rolled past. The town was beginning to split between fear and denial. It was just after noon when the stranger arrived. A silver rental car eased into the parking lot beside the Ashwood Pines Inn, tires crunching over fallen maple leaves. The woman who stepped out carried herself with a stillness that immediately changed the air around her. Naomi Carter was 33, a black attorney from Seattle with smooth espresso-brown skin, intelligent almond-shaped eyes, and shoulder-length natural curls that framed a face defined by sharp cheekbones and a calm, unreadable expression. She was tall and slender, dressed in a camel wool coat over a dark green turtleneck and fitted black slacks, every detail polished but understated. There was elegance in the way she moved, but no softness in the way she observed. Naomi had spent years as a civil litigator representing women harmed by powerful men and institutions, and that history had carved patience into her personality. She had learned long ago that predators relied on panic. Naomi survived by giving them none. The desk clerk smiled nervously as she signed the register. Business or pleasure? Naomi looked up, her voice smooth and measured. Closure. The clerk frowned, unsure if she had heard correctly, but Naomi had already taken her room key and turned toward the stairs. Across town, Monica stood inside the police station reviewing Claire Donovan's anonymous letter when Sheriff Daniel Mercer stepped in. "You've got someone asking about the case." Monica looked up sharply. "Reporter? Lawyer?" That made her pause. 10 minutes later, Naomi entered Monica's office with the same controlled composure she had worn at the inn. Monica's instincts sharpened immediately. Naomi did not look like a tourist, nor did she move like someone intimidated by law enforcement. "You came from Seattle?" Monica asked. Naomi nodded once. "I'm here because one of the victims from 3 months ago was my law school roommate's cousin, Lena Price." Monica's posture shifted, as Lena's name had surfaced in Vanessa's salon records the night before. Naomi placed a thin file folder on the desk. Lena was preparing to testify in a workplace harassment case involving a wealthy donor network in Washington state. 2 days later, she canceled her appointment, traveled east without telling anyone, and was never heard from again. Monica opened the folder. Photos, travel receipts, a guest invitation to a private architecture dinner in Ashwood Pines. Damian Cross. Monica's jaw tightened. "You think Damian lured her here?" Naomi met her gaze steadily. "I think men like Damian never stop when people let charm replace scrutiny." For the first time, Monica saw something deeper beneath Naomi's composure. Not fear, but purpose. Later that afternoon, Damian Cross first saw Naomi outside Bellwether Hall, where the town's elite had gathered for a preservation fundraiser. The old mansion glowed beneath chandeliers and strings of lantern light, the perfect stage for Damian's carefully maintained reputation. He crossed the marble terrace with a glass of champagne in hand, every inch the town's admired gentleman. Naomi stood near the balustrade overlooking the valley, autumn wind lifting the edge of her coat. "New in town," Damian said, his voice warm enough to sound accidental. Naomi turned slowly. Her expression remained calm, almost analytical, as if she were measuring not the man, but the effect he expected to have. "Is it that obvious?" she asked. Damian smiled. "Ashwood Pines notices strangers." "And you notice everyone?" He seemed amused by the edge in her tone. "Occupational habit. Architecture teaches you to study structure." Naomi glanced toward the lit windows behind him. "Some structures are designed to hide rot." For the first time, Damian's smile paused, only for a heartbeat. Then it returned, smoother than before. Most women in Ashwood Pines had been visibly charmed by him. Naomi did not blush, did not soften, did not lean closer. Her restraint stirred something unfamiliar in Damien, curiosity sharpened by challenge. By the time she excused herself, Damien was already watching her leave with far more interest than he intended. That night, near midnight, Naomi entered Vanessa Reed's salon through the back door. The front lights were off, leaving only the warm gold glow from the styling mirrors. Vanessa stood waiting in the center of the room, arms crossed, long, silk-pressed hair falling over one shoulder. "You're late," Vanessa said quietly. Naomi removed her gloves. "I had to make sure I wasn't followed." Vanessa studied her face for a moment, then nodded toward the office in back. "Monica trusts you?" "She doesn't trust anyone yet. That's why she's good." Inside the office, Vanessa pulled out the hidden drive containing salon records, appointment histories, and fragments of saved security stills. Naomi leaned over the desk, her lawyer's precision immediately visible in the way she organized timelines and names. "Lena, Maya, Jasmine, Renee, Tiana," Naomi said softly. "Every woman was prepared here before an exclusive event." Vanessa's amber eyes darkened. Someone wanted them to feel beautiful before they disappeared. Naomi looked at the still image of the black pickup. No. Someone wanted them to feel chosen. The distinction settled heavily between them. Outside, wind rattled the salon windows. The women said nothing for a moment, both understanding the same truth. Damien's victims had not been random. They had been curated. At the Gazette, Claire Donovan crouched low behind a line of overgrown hedges at the edge of red maple woods, camera trembling slightly in her hands. She had followed Damien's pickup from the Bellwether fundraiser, headlights off, heart pounding louder than the gravel beneath her boots. Moonlight spilled through the trees in fractured silver beams. Ahead, Damien's truck stopped beside an old logging path, and beyond it stood the silhouette of a cabin. It was older than Claire expected. Weather-worn timber, sagging porch, one upstairs window faintly lit from within. The structure sat isolated among black trees, hidden from the road by decades of unchecked growth. Claire lifted the camera and snapped 3 quick photos. Damien stepping out of the truck. Damien unlocking the cabin door. Damien entering alone. Her pulse thundered. The anonymous letter had been real. She took one final zoomed shot of the porch before backing away carefully into the trees. This place had history, and Damien belonged to it. Meanwhile, 12-year-old Eli Turner sat cross-legged on his bedroom floor, newspapers scattered around him as he replayed the memory of the night Tiana disappeared. The black pickup, mud on the wheel wells, a crack in the left taillight. And then it came to him. The plate. Not just the last 3 digits, the full number. He grabbed a pencil and scribbled it onto the margin of an old newspaper. VT 8417CX. His eyes widened. He knew those letters. He had seen the same initials painted discreetly on a construction sign downtown. Cross and Vale Expansion Project. Eli's stomach dropped. The truck belonged to Damien. By dawn, Monica stood alone outside the police station as Naomi approached from across the street, her camel coat moving in the cold wind. Claire's photos had already arrived in Monica's inbox. Vanessa's salon timeline was now pinned to the board. Eli's full plate number had confirmed ownership. For the first time, Damien Cross was no longer just the town's perfect gentleman. He was a man with a cabin in the woods, a truck at every scene, and a growing fascination with the one woman who had not bent beneath his charm. Monica looked toward the northern tree line where red maple woods darkened under the first light of morning. "He's taking the bait," Naomi said calmly. Monica nodded. But this chapter was not yet about the trap. It was about understanding the hunter. And Damien Cross had just met the first woman who made him forget control. Morning arrived over Ashwood Pines in layers of pale fog and copper light, the kind of cold northern dawn that made every rooftop and church steeple look carved from memory. The rain had passed, but the forest beyond Red Maple Woods still held darkness like it belonged there. Main Street was quieter than usual, as if the entire town sensed something tightening beneath the surface. For Monica Brooks, that feeling had become certainty. By 7 a.m., the evidence board inside the police station had transformed into something far more dangerous than scattered clues. Photographs, guest lists, salon appointment logs, Claire's cabin images, and Eli's confirmed plate number were now connected by sharp red lines that all converged on a single face. Damien Cross. Monica stood before the board in a charcoal blazer, sleeves rolled, her dark curls pulled into a tighter knot than usual. Her posture was rigid with focus, the kind born from years of homicide work and sharpened by the unresolved grief of her sister Elise's disappearance. But this time, for the first time in years, Monica wasn't carrying the investigation alone. The women were beginning to move as one. Vanessa Reed entered through the side door carrying a leather laptop case, her cream trench coat still damp from the mist outside. Her amber eyes, usually guarded behind salon-perfect confidence, now held something sharper. Resolve. Losing Maya had hollowed something inside her, but it had also made her meticulous. Grief had turned her into an archivist of every detail people overlooked. Behind her came Naomi Carter, calm as ever in a forest green coat, a legal pad tucked under one arm. Unlike Monica's intensity or Vanessa's simmering emotion, Naomi's strength lay in stillness. Years of facing powerful men in court had taught her how predators moved when they believed they were winning. Monica looked from one woman to the other. Then let's stop treating these as separate stories. For the next 2 hours, the station conference room became the nerve center of a three-front investigation. Monica mapped Damien's movements using traffic cameras, fundraiser attendance logs, and Cross and Vale project schedules. Her police instincts worked in patterns, routes, timings, behavioral windows, and opportunities. Every exclusive event Damien attended aligned with a disappearance or death within 48 hours. Vanessa layered salon data on top of Monica's map. Her client records showed every victim had come in for styling, often requesting looks they believed Damien would admire. Soft curls, formal updos, elegant evening makeup. Vanessa also recovered a deleted security still from 3 months earlier. Lena Price stepping into Damien's black pickup outside the salon. Naomi built the psychological framework. He doesn't just target beauty, she said, circling the names. He targets women who are socially visible but emotionally isolated in the moment, women who want to feel chosen. Monica's eyes narrowed. So he engineers intimacy. Naomi nodded. And reward. That single insight changed everything. Damien wasn't selecting victims randomly. He was curating an experience. A chosen woman, a private invitation, a carefully designed evening. The illusion of exclusivity before disappearance. The structure itself felt almost architectural. Damien's signature. By afternoon, Naomi began her role. The bait. She arrived at Cross and Vale Architecture under the pretense of discussing a legal dispute involving land easements near Seattle investors. Damien welcomed her into his glass office with the same measured smile, but this time there was something undeniably more attentive in his gaze. "You came back," he said, rising from behind his desk. Naomi set her portfolio down calmly. "I find ambitious men fascinating." The line was deliberate. She saw it land instantly. Damien moved closer, his confidence effortless, his tone lowered into something warmer. "Then you must be terribly disappointed with most of them." Naomi allowed the faintest smile, enough to reward him without surrendering control. The next 40 minutes became a performance layered beneath a performance. Naomi let Damien believe he was guiding the conversation toward familiarity, asking about Seattle, her work, and why a woman like her would visit a town like Ashwood Pines alone. She gave him just enough truth to feel intimacy, not enough to feel safety. By the time she left, Damien personally walked her to her car. He was intrigued now, interested in the one woman who responded with intelligence instead of admiration, exactly as Naomi intended. Across town, Claire Donovan sat in the dim back archives of the Gazette with an old banker's box balanced on her lap. She had spent the morning following a strange instinct sparked by the red maple cabin. Her mother had once warned her never to trust men who build perfect lives too quickly. At 16, Claire had dismissed it as bitterness. Now she understood it might have been fear. Inside the box were newspaper clippings from Oregon, dated 20 years earlier. The papers were brittle, edges yellowed with age. 3 women vanish after private charity events. Portland police stalled. Claire's breath caught. A photograph paperclipped to the file showed her mother at 25. Evelyn Donovan, younger then, pale and elegant, with chestnut hair falling in soft waves over a long, gray coat. She had the same sharp blue-gray eyes Claire inherited, but her expression in the photo was different. Haunted, even in youth. Evelyn had once been a rising investigative reporter in Portland before abruptly leaving journalism and moving east after what the family always called a breakdown. Claire had believed the story for years, until she found Evelyn's handwritten note in the margin of the file. He called himself David Crow. Same smile, same black truck. I ran before the cabin door closed. Claire's pulse pounded. Damian Cross, David Crow, same methods, same design. Her mother had not suffered a breakdown. She had survived him. By evening, Claire drove to her childhood home on the edge of town. Evelyn Donovan answered the door in a navy cardigan, older now, but still carrying that same quiet sharpness. At 59, Evelyn was slender and graceful, her silver-threaded auburn hair pinned loosely back. She had become cautious over the years, shaped by surviving what no one had believed. When Claire showed her Damian's photo, Evelyn went pale. "That's him," she whispered. Claire stared. 20 years? Evelyn nodded, voice trembling. Portland, then Boise, then Spokane, different names, same eyes, same way of making women feel like the only person in the room. The truth hit like ice. Damian had not built a reputation. He had built a trail. Back at the station, Monica pinned the Oregon clippings beside the Ashwood Pines board. Naomi and Vanessa stood on either side of her, absorbing the scale of what they were facing. "He changes towns," Monica said. "New firm, new donations, new name." Vanessa crossed her arms tightly. "And new victims." Naomi studied Damian's timeline with chilling calm. "He reinvents before suspicion catches up." Claire arrived moments later, breathless, setting her mother's old photo on the table. Monica looked at the image, then at Damian's present-day headshot. The resemblance in the eyes was undeniable. A man who had crossed states and decades by hiding behind refinement. The twist was no longer theoretical. Damian Cross was not Damian Cross. He had been David Crow in Oregon, possibly Daniel Crane in Idaho, maybe someone else before that. A predator who changed identities the way others changed cities. As night settled over Ashwood Pines, Naomi stood by the police station window, watching Damian's office lights burn across town. "He thinks I'm interested," she said quietly. Monica stepped beside her. "Good." Vanessa opened the recovered calendar file from Damian's assistant's hacked schedule. One private dinner invitation. Tomorrow night. No location listed yet. Naomi's face remained unreadable, but Monica saw the steel beneath it. This was no longer just about solving murders. It was about exposing a man who had spent 20 years redesigning evil under different names. And now, for the first time, 3 women from 3 different paths had assembled enough truth to force the mask to crack. But tonight's chapter ended exactly where it should, with the trap only beginning to take shape. By the following evening, winter arrived early in Ashwood Pines. A dry northern wind swept down from the hills, carrying the season's first thin veil of snow across the stone streets and rooftops. White dust clung to church steps, iron fences, and the black branches above Main Street, turning the town into something deceptively peaceful. But beyond the lantern glow and decorated storefronts, the road north toward Red Maple Woods had already disappeared beneath frost and darkness. Inside cross and veil architecture, Damian Cross stood beside the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, watching snow gather along the ledges like a slow-moving curtain. He looked as flawless as ever in a midnight blue overcoat, the perfect gentleman Ashwood Pines still wanted to believe in. Yet tonight, something in his dark eyes had sharpened. Anticipation. Naomi Carter sat across from him, posture elegant, gloved hands folded calmly over her lap. The green wool of her coat contrasted with the polished black leather chair, making her appear almost like a deliberate brushstroke in Damien's carefully designed world. "You trust people too easily," Damien said softly, pouring 2 glasses of red wine. Naomi lifted one brow, accepting the glass without drinking. "Interesting thing for a man like you to say." His smile deepened. "A man like me? One who understands how environments shape emotion. You build spaces people feel safe inside." For the first time, Damien's gaze lingered longer than usual. She was giving him what he craved, not admiration, but recognition. "That's rare," he said. "Most people only see the walls." Naomi let a pause settle, then lowered her eyes just enough to suggest reflection. "Maybe I'd like to see what you built for yourself." The invitation she was truly accepting hung unspoken between them, exactly as planned. Damien stepped closer, voice warm, almost intimate. "There's a place in Red Maple Woods, private, quiet, no distractions, somewhere I go when I want to think clearly." Naomi met his gaze without hesitation. "I'd like that." Outside, snow thickened. The bait had been taken. An hour later, Damien's black pickup moved through the forest road, headlights carving pale tunnels through the snowfall. Naomi sat in the passenger seat, calm on the surface, every nerve beneath it alive. Her phone remained in the pocket of her coat, location services silently transmitting every mile to Monica Brooks. Beside the frozen edge of Silver Lake, Monica sat inside an unmarked SUV, watching the digital tracker move north across her tablet screen. "He's taking Route 9, Sheriff Daniel Mercer said from the driver's seat. Monica's expression never shifted. "Toward the cabin." She had changed into tactical black beneath her wool coat, service weapon holstered beneath one arm. Years of police work had taught her how to wait. But tonight, every second scraped against the memory of Elise. This time, she told herself, the woman walking into danger knew exactly why. Still, fear pressed beneath the professionalism. Not fear of Damien, fear of timing. At the edge of Main Street, Vanessa Reed sat alone in the closed salon's back office, fingers moving rapidly over a second laptop connected to a web of stolen feeds, camera loops, and archived security credentials. Her cousin Maya's death had forced her to learn more than beauty and presentation. In grief, she had taught herself digital surveillance, first to understand what happened, then to ensure it never happened again. Tonight, her amber eyes reflected a live feed pulled from the tiny pin camera Monica had helped hide inside Naomi's coat button. The image flickered. Trees, snow. Then the outline of the cabin. Vanessa rerouted the stream through the town's dormant holiday display system, the same public video grid used during the Fall Lantern Festival. If Damien exposed himself tonight, Ashwood Pines itself would witness it. Across town at the Gazette, Claire Donovan sat at her desk under a single brass lamp, writing the opening lines of the most explosive story of her career. Ashwood Pines, philanthropist linked to multi-state death trail. Her hands moved quickly, but her mind stayed fixed on her mother's trembling voice the night before. He changes names, but never the ritual. Claire added the Oregon files, the Idaho alias lead, and the Ashwood Pines evidence into a locked morning edition draft scheduled for automatic release at sunrise. If tonight confirmed what they already feared, the entire country would wake up to Damien Cross's true face. The cabin stood deeper in the woods than Naomi remembered from Claire's photographs. Snow gathered across the sagging porch roof and the surrounding pines, muting every sound except the crunch of Damien's boots and the soft wind threading through frozen branches. Inside, the structure felt older than the town itself. Aged timber walls, low ceilings, antique oil lamps casting amber shadows across carefully arranged furniture. Everything inside was immaculate. Not abandoned, maintained, designed. Damien removed his coat with deliberate ease and gestured toward the fire already burning in the stone hearth. "I come here when the town becomes too loud." Naomi stepped farther inside, eyes calmly scanning the room without appearing to. No photographs, no visible trophies, but the architecture itself felt ritualistic. One central chair angled toward the fire, a narrow table of polished black wood, a phonograph speaker system hidden near the ceiling beams. Then she noticed the floor, fine marks in curved patterns, repeated. Something had moved across the timber many times. "You've spent years perfecting this place," Naomi said. Damien's smile returned. "Perfection takes patience." His voice had changed now, less public charm, more possession. He poured another glass of wine and handed it to her. Naomi lifted it near her lips, but never drank. Then Damien crossed the room and pressed a small switch near the mantel. A soft sound filled the cabin. At first it was almost musical, a low, hypnotic tone like wind through glass. Then the floorboards near the chair shifted. Naomi's pulse slammed once, hard. From the shadow beneath the narrow black table a snake emerged. It was long, sleek, and midnight dark, its scales reflecting the firelight like polished obsidian. The serpent moved with unnatural calm, its body thick and muscular, easily over 6 feet long. Its head lifted slowly, tongue tasting the air as it responded not to instinct but to sound. Damien watched Naomi closely. No performance now, no smile for the town. Only revelation. "You're remarkably composed," he said softly. Naomi kept her breathing even, every courtroom instinct in her translating now into survival. "You trained it, with frequency and reward." Damien's voice was almost proud. "People underestimate what sound can teach." The snake glided across the floor toward her chair, obedient to the hidden speaker's low pulse. Every victim, every puncture wound, every perfectly staged death. Now it all existed in the same room. Naomi looked up at Damien, her face unreadable. "This is what you built." His eyes darkened with something between admiration and obsession. "This is what no one ever understood." Miles away, Monica's tracker stopped moving. Cabin confirmed. She looked up at Daniel. "Now." The SUV doors opened into the storm. Snow whipped across the tactical team as they moved toward the North Trail, Monica leading with fierce, focused urgency. Naomi's signal was steady, alive. Inside. Back in the salon, Vanessa's live stream stabilized fully. The cabin interior now filled not only her screen, but the giant digital holiday display mounted in Ashwood Pines Town Square, where late-night pedestrians slowed in confusion beneath the falling snow. On the towering screen, Damien stood in firelight. The snake circled Naomi's chair. Gasps rose from the small gathering crowd. A shop owner recognized Damien first. Then another woman screamed. By the Gazette's final hour before print lock, Claire inserted one final line into the draft. What the town worshipped as refinement was, in truth, ritualized predation hidden in plain sight. She saved the article. Scheduled 6 a.m. Back inside the cabin, the snake lifted higher, its head level with Naomi's throat, body swaying to the low engineered frequency pulsing through the hidden speakers. Damien stepped closer, completely certain now. Certain she had trusted him. Certain she understood too late. Naomi met his gaze steadily, refusing him the fear he expected, because this chapter was never about the attack. It was about the unveiling. The truth had finally entered the room, and Ashwood Pines was already watching. The snowstorm thickened outside, sealing the cabin deeper into white silence as Monica's team closed the final miles through red maple woods. And Chapter 5 ended exactly where it had to, with the monster's true weapon revealed in firelight. The cabin had never felt smaller. Firelight trembled against the timber walls as snow battered the windows in restless white waves. Inside, the only steady thing was the snake, its midnight black body coiling in slow circles around Naomi Carter's chair, its lifted head swaying to the engineered frequency pulsing through the hidden speaker beams. The sound was almost beautiful. A low, hypnotic hum that had already stolen too many lives beneath Damien Cross's careful design. Damien stood only a few feet away, his expression stripped of every trace of the gentleman Ashwood Pines thought it knew. In the firelight, his features seemed harder, sharper. Every polished kindness burned away to reveal the predator beneath. His dark eyes carried something colder than violence, ownership. "You understand now," he said softly, stepping closer, "why they trusted me." Naomi held his gaze, her pulse controlled by sheer discipline. Her gloved right hand rested against the side seam of her coat, fingers already brushing the object hidden there, the ultrasonic tone device. It was smaller than a car key fob, matte black and deceptively plain. A prototype frequency emitter Naomi had traced through one of Damien's old Oregon aliases in Claire's archived files. 20 years earlier, a wildlife control contractor had documented experimental sound training methods used on reptiles. Damien had adapted the science into murder. Tonight, Naomi intended to use his own ritual against him. "You wanted them to feel chosen," she said, her voice calm enough to make Damien lean closer. "That was always the point." A slow smile curved his lips. "No, I wanted them still." The snake lifted higher. Damien reached toward the hidden speaker controls near the mantel, ready to increase the tone. That was the moment Naomi pressed the device. A new sound sliced into the room. It was too high for the human ear to register clearly, more pressure than noise, but the effect on the serpent was immediate. Its body stiffened mid-sway, head snapping sharply away from Naomi. Damien froze. For the first time in 20 years, confusion cracked his control. The snake turned, slowly, deliberately, its obsidian head angled toward Damien instead. His eyes widened. "What did you do?" Naomi rose from the chair in one smooth movement, never breaking eye contact. "I read the old files better than your victims ever could." The serpent lunged. Damien stumbled backward, knocking over the wine glass as the snake struck fast and clean into the exposed skin just above his wrist. He gasped, shock replacing arrogance as the creature recoiled and circled again, now responding fully to Naomi's frequency pulse. Venom spread quickly. The man who had weaponized silence and sound now stood paralyzed by the same science. Outside, Monica Brooks led the SWAT convoy through the final tree line, boots cutting deep into snowdrifts as red and blue tactical strobes flashed silently against the storm. Her black tactical vest was dusted white with snow, dark curls damp against her temple, but nothing in her expression wavered. Naomi's signal had stopped moving. The live stream from Vanessa confirmed the confrontation inside. Monica raised a fist. The team halted at the edge of the porch. Beside her, Lieutenant Marcus Hale, the SWAT commander, checked the thermal feed tablet mounted to his forearm. Marcus was a tall black man in his early 40s with a military straight posture, shaved head, and calm steel-gray eyes that came from years of urban hostage rescue work in New York before transferring north. He spoke little, but his stillness under pressure made the rest of the team sharper. "2 heat signatures upright," Marcus said quietly, one moving low to the ground. Monica's jaw tightened. "That's the snake." She drew her weapon. "On my mark." Back in Ashwood Pines Town Square, the storm had done the opposite of emptying the streets. It had gathered people. Dozens of residents now stood beneath swirling snow and holiday lights, staring at the massive public screen Vanessa Reed had hijacked. The cabin interior glowed over the square like a public trial. Damien's real face broadcast larger than life as Naomi stood over him with impossible calm. Vanessa remained in her salon office, fingers moving rapidly over keyboard shortcuts as she stabilized the signal and mirrored it onto the Gazette's emergency alert network. Her breathing shook, but her hands did not. This was for Maya. For Lena. For every woman who had sat in her salon chair believing she was about to be seen, not selected. She opened a secondary feed. Town-wide emergency push notification. Live evidence stream. Damien Cross connected to serial deaths. Phones across Ashwood Pines lit up almost simultaneously. At the Gazette, Claire Donovan hit send on the emergency news bulletin. The article exploded through local feeds, regional stations, and the Gazette's live homepage. Breaking: Ashwood Pines, philanthropist exposed as multi-state serial predator. Claire stood from her desk, heart racing as newsroom alerts began flooding in from Boston, Portland, and Seattle affiliates requesting syndication rights. Her mother's survival story, the Oregon alias, the Idaho disappearance file. Damien's empire of false names was collapsing in real time, and the whole town was watching it happen. Inside the cabin, Damien staggered against the mantel, one hand gripping the bite wound as numbness raced up his arm. The serpent remained coiled near Naomi's feet, now perfectly still under her device's frequency. "You," he whispered, voice trembling. "You planned this?" Naomi's face remained unreadable. "No, we did." The front door exploded inward. SWAT flooded the room in synchronized motion, black uniforms and rifle lights cutting through firelight and shadow. "Federal Tactical, don't move." Monica entered directly behind them, weapon raised, eyes locking instantly on Naomi. Alive. The breath Monica had been holding since the tracker stopped finally released. Damien tried to step backward, but his legs were already weakening. Marcus Hale signaled the containment team, who quickly deployed a reinforced wildlife transport shield around the snake without harming it. Even now, Monica wanted the creature alive. Proof mattered. Damien collapsed to one knee, the poison slowing him but not yet fatal. Naomi lowered the ultrasonic device only when Monica reached her. For one suspended moment, the two women simply looked at each other. The plan had worked, but the cost of walking into the monster's ritual still trembled in the air around them. Outside, the storm had intensified, and with it came the final payoff. At the edge of Town Square, 12-year-old Eli Turner stood clutching his bicycle handlebars, staring up at the giant screen with wide, frightened eyes. His knit cap was dusted in snow, cheeks flushed from the cold. Sheriff Daniel Mercer knelt beside him. "Eli, are you sure?" The boy swallowed hard and nodded. On live local broadcast, Claire's emergency segment cut briefly to Eli's recorded statement from the station. His small voice carried across the square speakers. "That black truck, I saw it by Silver Lake every time someone disappeared. Same crack in the taillight, same plate. Damien was there every time." The crowd erupted in horrified murmurs. It was the final civilian confirmation. The innocent witness who had seen what adults ignored. Back in the cabin, paramedics moved in behind SWAT as Damien's breathing became shallow. Monica stepped closer, her voice cold and controlled. 20 years, 3 states, how many names?" Damien tried to smile, but the venom had already stolen his certainty. This chapter, however, was never about his confession. It was about the reversal. The hunter exposed, the town awakened, the women he thought he had chosen becoming the ones who ended him. As Monica watched Damien taken alive into custody, Naomi stood beside the fire with the ultrasonic device still warm in her hand, the same stormlight from outside reflecting across her calm face. The longest night in Ashwood Pines had finally turned, and by dawn, the town would never belong to Damien Cross again. Morning broke over Ashwood Pines with the kind of silence that only comes after a storm has finally spent itself. Snow still rested on the rooftops, church steps, and the bare maple branches that lined Main Street. But the sky above the northern hills had opened into a pale blue, washed with gold. For the first time in months, the mist over Silver Lake no longer felt threatening. It lifted slowly beneath the first rays of sunlight, turning the frozen water into a sheet of silver fire. The town that had spent an entire season whispering now stepped into the open. By 9 o'clock, the square was full. Residents gathered beneath the clock tower and the giant holiday display screen that had exposed Damien the night before. Families stood shoulder to shoulder with shop owners, teachers, nurses, and construction workers who had once thanked Damien Cross for his generosity. Faces carried shock, shame, grief, and something new. Relief. The fear that had stalked the women of Ashwood Pines for months finally had a face, and that face was no longer protected by charm. Sheriff Daniel Mercer stood at the center of the square in full dress coat, silver stubble sharp in the morning cold, reading from the official multi-state task force statement. His weathered voice carried through the speakers mounted above the plaza. Damian Cross, also known as David Crow, Daniel Crane, and multiple other aliases, has been formally linked to serial disappearances and murders spanning Oregon, Idaho, Washington, and Vermont over the past 20 years. A wave of stunned murmurs rippled through the crowd. 20 years. The number changed everything. This was no isolated monster hidden in a small town. This was a man who had rebuilt himself through philanthropy, architecture, and reinvention, while leaving a trail of women behind him from state to state. Claire Donovan stood near the Gazette press van, notebook in hand, recording the reactions of the crowd with the practiced precision that had once belonged to her father. Her auburn hair was tucked beneath a gray wool cap, cheeks pink from the cold, blue-gray eyes brighter than they had been in years. Overnight, her article had gone national. By dawn, it had been cited by major papers in Boston, Seattle, Portland, and Chicago. A black SUV pulled into the square, and from it stepped Helen Ruiz, a nationally respected journalism editor from the Boston Chronicle. Helen was a Latina woman in her early 50s, elegant and sharp, with silver-streaked black hair cut into a sleek bob, and dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to assess the weight of every word before it was spoken. She had built her reputation exposing political cover-ups and trafficking rings, and she recognized a career-defining story the moment she read Claire's overnight investigation. She approached Claire with a gloved hand extended. "You just changed your career," Helen said. Claire blinked, stunned. Helen smiled faintly. "The National Press Guild wants your Oregon to Vermont series for award submission." For a moment, Claire could only stare. Her mother, Evelyn, standing a few feet behind her in a navy coat, covered her mouth with trembling fingers. For 20 years, Evelyn had carried survival as silence. Now, her daughter had turned that silence into truth. Claire looked up at the winter sunlight spreading across the square and thought of her father's old words. Stories don't change the past. They protect the future. For Vanessa Reed, the morning felt different. She stood outside the salon, the sign above the door dusted with snow, watching women from the town pause to hug one another in the street. Her long, silk-pressed hair rested neatly over a cream cashmere coat, but her usual perfect composure was softened by tears she no longer felt the need to hide. Maya Reed's framed photo sat in the salon window beside a candle. 22 years old forever. Vanessa had spent months drowning in grief, then turning that grief into data, surveillance, and quiet vengeance. But now, with Damien exposed and the women of Ashwood Pines finally safe, grief had room to become something else. Purpose. That afternoon, Vanessa met with Eleanor Price, Lena's mother, a warm-faced black woman in her late 50s with soft features and gentle brown eyes made older by loss. Eleanor had been a school principal in Seattle before retiring, known for mentoring young women from underfunded neighborhoods. Losing Lena had nearly broken her, but even in grief, she carried grace. Together, Vanessa and Eleanor signed the first papers establishing the Maya Lena Women's Futures Scholarship, a yearly fund for young black women pursuing law, journalism, medicine, and public leadership. It should help the women he tried to silence, Vanessa said quietly. Eleanor squeezed her hand. Then they'll keep speaking through it. Across town, Monica Brooks stood alone on the frozen edge of Silver Lake. The morning light turned the water into mirrored gold, and for the first time since arriving in Ashwood Pines, Monica allowed herself to stop moving. Her black coat shifted in the wind, dark curls loosening around her face. The lake was still. No sirens, no radios, no urgency, only memory. She pulled an old photograph from her coat pocket. Elise Brooks, 22, smiling on a Boston rooftop, alive in a way photographs cruelly preserve forever. For years, Monica had carried her sister's disappearance as an unfinished sentence. Every victim she failed to save reopened it, Every predator she caught only sharpened the ache of the one who had escaped. Until now. Damien's Oregon files, his Idaho aliases, and Claire's recovered archive had led Boston investigators overnight to an abandoned Spokane property linked to one of his older names. Hidden inside were keepsakes, victim records, and among them, Elise's silver pendant necklace. Proof, not survival, but truth. And truth, Monica realized, was enough to let grief change shape. She closed her hand around the pendant and exhaled into the cold morning air. "I found your ending," she whispered. The words did not heal her, but they finally released her. By early spring, Ashwood Pines had begun to change. Snow melted into running streams along the stone gutters. Shop windows reopened with flowers instead of memorial candles. The hilltop mansions that once hosted Damien's curated gatherings now stood under investigation. Their doors shut, their guest lists subpoenaed. At the corner of Main and Willow, a renovated brick office opened beneath a new brass sign. Naomi Carter, Women's Justice Advocacy. Naomi stood in the doorway on opening day, wearing a navy blazer over a cream blouse, calm as ever, though something in her gaze had softened into belonging. She had chosen to remain in Ashwood Pines, not because the town needed a savior, but because it needed structure, legal, social, and emotional, for women who had spent too long surviving in silence. Inside the office, framed on the wall, hung the first scholarship certificate Vanessa had delivered that morning. Justice was becoming infrastructure, not reaction. Intention. Later that day, Monica stopped by the office carrying coffee. Claire arrived minutes later with the framed front page of her national award-winning article. Vanessa followed with fresh flowers from Maya's memorial garden behind the salon. No speeches were needed. The women simply stood together in the warm spring light filtering through Naomi's office windows. 4 lives once pulled together by fear, now held in place by what they had built after it. As the season turned fully, Silver Lake thawed. At sunrise, its surface reflected the entire eastern sky in bands of gold, rose, and pale blue. Children returned to the lakeside paths. Couples walked beneath blooming dogwoods. The place that had once collected the town's terror now held its healing. Ashwood Pines had not forgotten. It had transformed, and in the final image of that long winter, the lake reflected the rising sun so brightly it seemed almost impossible to look at directly, a symbol not of what had been taken, but of what had finally been restored. In the end, justice had not arrived as vengeance alone. It came as truth, memory, community, and women refusing to let fear write the final chapter. The dawn over Ashwood Pines belonged to them now. The deepest lesson from this story is that evil rarely arrives looking dangerous. Sometimes it wears kindness, success, generosity, and the kind of smile people are taught to trust. In everyday life, this reminds us to look beyond appearances and pay attention to patterns, actions, and how people make others feel over time. Real character is not built by charm, but by consistency, honesty, and respect for the vulnerable. This story also teaches the power of courage and community. Monica, Naomi, Vanessa, and Claire each use their own gifts: investigation, truth, intelligence, and compassion to protect others. In our daily lives, we may not face monsters like Damien, but we all meet moments where silence can protect the wrong person. Speaking up, checking on people around us, and refusing to ignore warning signs can save lives, families, and futures. There's also an important educational lesson here about how trauma can either break us or shape us into people who protect others. Monica turned grief into justice. Vanessa turned loss into opportunity for young women. Naomi turned knowledge into protection. These are reminders that pain does not have to be the end of our story. With faith, wisdom, and support, pain can become purpose. My honest reflection on this story is that it beautifully shows how truth always outlives deception. No matter how long lies hide behind wealth, race, status, or social reputation, the truth eventually finds light when brave people refuse to stop searching. That is a lesson every community should carry into real life. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs the reminder that courage and truth still matter. Tell us in the comments what lessons stayed with you the most. If you believe justice, wisdom, and faith can still overcome darkness, please subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing stories that change lives. May God bless everyone watching today. May He protect your family, give you wisdom to recognize hidden danger, and fill your home with peace and light. If this message speaks to your spirit, comment Amen below, and let this story become a blessing for someone else.